we'll kick off first of all with Alister Leggatt from Affinity Water, Integrated Catchment Manager, I believe.
Yes.
You're going to give us a quick update on the water situation in Hertfordshire.
As was mentioned before, I'm Alister Leggatt. I'm Integrated Catchment Manager at Affinity Water, so I lead and coordinate our wider environmental programme, which includes how we're reducing abstraction to benefit chalk streams within our supply area. I support our fantastic biodiversity team, and one of our lead ecologists is here today, so if you've got any questions around that, I'm sure she'll be happy to answer. Our catchment management team that look at some of the challenges of land management and the impacts to water. So we do a lot of fantastic work with farmers and businesses in the catchment to reduce pollution, improve the way that hydrogeology of the catchment is managed as well. And we do a lot more around investigating the impacts of our activities. We've got a team that do some amazing river restoration work where we're looking to support restoration and improving habitat and ecology of our chalk streams as well. So a whole wide range of things that Affinity are involved in there. But I'm actually going to just give a brief update around water resources within our region, but particularly with the focus around Hertfordshire. And I think probably, hopefully you can all see that slide. That's our current position, and I think it's probably the least surprising slide that I'll put up today. We are in a good position on water resources. We've had a particularly kind of wet spring, summer, early autumn, even if we've had a bit of a dry spell at the moment. So it has put us in a very strong position around our water resources. But I think those of you who have listened to me over the years talk, we are totally dependent on winter rainfall to replenish our aquifers, to give us enough water to be able to supply, and also obviously ensure flow in chalk streams throughout the year as well, even though obviously they do have their natural kind of parts where they dry naturally, but obviously our activity can have a significant bearing on that. So when we're in a good position like this, even though it's much better for us, we still need to be conserving our water resources as much as possible, and I'll talk a bit about that towards the end. But if you're interested to know more, we do have our website, and there's a link down there, and there's a lot more information on there about how water works within our supply area. There's some really useful videos about how we take water, how we manage our system, and then how kind of aquifers work as well, if you're interested. Well, I've got a few kind of facts and stats around the rainfall that we've seen. So we're continually as a team monitoring the water resources position. We need to be able to plan ahead. We need to have contingency plans to manage if we're at risk of going into drought, dry weather periods, but also we have to have contingencies and plans for managing around floods, because a lot of our pumping stations, our treatment works tend to be at the bottom of a river valley, and they tend to be very susceptible to flooding. So we have to also be working very hard to protect those. So understanding what's going to be happening currently and in the future, and what that might mean for us and the wider environment is really important. So we'll focus on the central area, our central area, which covers the Hertfordshire and the home counties area. And over the last 3 months, we've seen 120% rainfall compared to the long-term average that we've been continually tracking. October was less rainfall compared to the long-term average, but you can see the difference really compared to our east region, which is over towards Clacton-on-Sea and Manningtree, and then also our area around Folkestone and Dover in the southeast that we also supply water. You can see there's been a significant difference in the amount of rainfall we see. So even in a relatively small geographic area, particularly from west to east, we see significant differences in the amount of rainfall that we observe. And that also translates into how much of that rainfall is percolating down into groundwater. So we refer to this as recharge, and as I mentioned previously, this is absolutely vital for water supply, for chalk streams, and most of that recharge happens during the winter months, because over the summer a lot of that water is taken up by crop growth, plant growth, evapotranspiration. So we really do depend on being able to keep that water on the land, in our catchments, not washing off with all of the soil and sediment out into our estuaries. We want to hold as much of that water back in the winter so we can see that recharge. And as you can see in the central area again, the recharge we've seen compared to our long-term average is 170%. And that really means we've seen a significant amount going more into aquifers than we would normally see. A lot of that is due to we've seen soils saturated a lot quicker this year because of the wet summer. And then as soon as obviously the water's got nowhere else to go, it's either going to go down or it's going to go over into the rivers. And obviously with some of the flooding we've seen, you can see where a lot of that's been going, particularly with the intense rainfall events. So from a water resource perspective, that's incredibly good to be having that starting position at the start of the winter. It gives us much more confidence about our water resource position going into next year as well, which is obviously really important for us. And this is how that looks in kind of a graph form, and this is my final slide. And what I really wanted to show here was, so we do track this, so this kind of purple wavy line here is what we refer to as the long-term average. These are more kind of from an internal and regulatory management perspective. They're around kind of certain triggers, drought zone triggers, that we have to then enact certain things within the company to manage our resources, to engage with yourselves around water usage, temporary use bans if it gets really significant and dropping down into the orange, brown and red. Fortunately, as you can see, we're well above that at the moment, and for the last kind of, since kind of early 2023, we've been tracking above the long-term average. And as you can see, that kind of wet winter, spring and summer that we've seen has put us significantly higher. And the blue line across the top is actually our flood zone trigger. And when we pass over that flood zone trigger, we then have to put in special contingency measures to protect our sites. And we've had certain years where certain sites have been completely underwater. You've only been able to reach them by boat. And when we've had boreholes, so literally the water's been coming up out of the boreholes, going artesian, which is extremely difficult for us to manage and has water quality concern. So we have to be very, and obviously it is also in the winter customers are using less water, so we can't move that water around our network quick enough. So even droughts, we have significant challenge, but even in flood periods, we also have significant challenges. It's certainly not easy supplying drinking water. So we can see at the moment we're up, we've hit that flood trigger again, as we've seen the recharge going into this winter. We've done some different forecasts. We do different forecast scenarios. What will happen if we see 200% rainfall against the long-term average, 120%, 100%, 80% and 60%. And we're expecting under all of those scenarios that we will be above that flood zone trigger for the next 6 months. So feels very strange saying this at this conference, but actually this dry period that we're seeing at the moment is actually quite a good thing from both a water resource and flood perspective. And if we do experience some significant rainfall or prolonged rainfall events over this winter, we are obviously likely to see some flood risk increasing. So that's both from ourselves, but also for properties and people who are susceptible to flooding. So we are in a quite a challenging position this winter, so having this dry period is not a bad thing at all. And as you can see, I did put a note on, because one of the things, we don't usually put this into context with what we see in other years, in other comparable years, and as you can see from my last bullet point there, groundwater levels are actually in a higher position now and above average conditions that we experienced in the flooding events of 2001, when I think, if any of you remember, I think Jersey, Farness and Albans became an island during that particular flood event. 2014, which was one of the major flooding events that I worked on the flood response for, and then 2021. So actually at the end of October, we're actually in higher groundwater level position now than we were in any of those times. So once again, reinforcing that actually the dry weather period at the moment is probably quite a good thing in that respect. So that brings my talk to an end, and obviously I always talk about water efficiency, and I think even though in our current position, that's maybe not as critical for us at the moment, but I think we're only two dry winters away from a drought, is what we always say in this region. So we really do encourage everyone to think about their water usage. It's not just in the short term, it's really around a cultural change of how we look at and consider water. So there's a whole load of information on our website about how you can save water. We do home water efficiency checks. We're going to be rolling out over the next few years a smart metering programme. So we're currently just confirming the technology and the contractors we're going to use to deliver this. But this will be in the same way with gas and electricity, where you can really track, monitor your water usage. You'll be able to identify if you've got any potential leaks, things like that. And we know that the smart meter is probably going to reduce water usage across the board by about 15 to 20%. So that's going to be a really significant thing for us. But there'll be so much support and information that will be going on with that programme. So I really encourage you to kind of, do what you can to save water. And obviously, if you've got any questions for myself or the team, we'll be happy to answer them. So thank you very much.